Let's start with the origin story of Lantern. How did it come to be, and how did you find yourself at the helm?
Great question. Well, the story of Lantern includes the story of Drizzly, which is the largest alcohol e-commerce marketplace and delivery platform in North America. It was founded in Boston in 2012 by two Boston college grads, and they operated and kind of grew the business over 7 or 8 years, and then realized in 2018 that they had built this really powerful technology platform to deliver regulated product. And so where else should they apply it? Obviously, they should apply it to cannabis. We're based in Boston. 2018 was right around the time that cannabis, it had been legalized a couple years earlier. It was becoming operational right here in our backyard. So the realization was it was a natural next step to take for the Drizzly technology. Drizzly had also really done things the right way in alcohol, and they'd gone out and created really deep regulatory relationships. Many of those regulators are the same or very adjacent to cannabis regulators. So Drizzly as a whole had a great reputation out there in the world. So kind of decided to do it in 2018. 2019 was spent setting up the business. We actually, Lantern, operate fully separately than Drizzly, the alcohol side, both owned by the same holding company, but there was like a lot of governance stuff to do. And then we launched in 2020 in May for medical delivery here in Boston. It was, it's not a big market, but it was a way to test out product market fit, make sure that, everything was kind of working. We were testing some marketing channels. I joined right at the beginning of 2020, and I honestly had not really been pursuing a career in cannabis, although now that I'm in it, I can't imagine being anywhere else. But my background for my entire career has been in retail, B2C companies, originally brick and mortar, then digitally native, then omni-channel. So I've spent 20 years plus thinking about the customer journey and, how customers shop, the psychology of that, and how to solve hard consumer problems. And if you think about cannabis, e-commerce, and delivery, that's all of those things. And it's just been really fascinating to think about how the customer shops for this, how they understand it, how they interact with it online, et cetera. And so that's what gets me up every day thinking about that.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's such an emerging category, even though cannabis has been around and consumed for ages, but a legal market with branded products and goods, and a framework for people to walk into the store and purchase products. Even myself, who's been involved in the cannabis industry for over a decade, I still walk into a store or I'm browsing online and really trying to discover things and learn things. And I think you think about all the new consumers coming into the category, plus the existing consumers that are just exposed to all these new brands, new products, new formats. There is a lot of the customer journey that needs to be thought through. With Lantern, how do you guys approach that? Is it through an app, through the app, through the website, and just kind of how you present products? Do you do some education in there as well?
Yeah, so what we're aiming to do with Lantern is create the first/only real marketplace experience for customers that doesn't actually exist out there today. The only ways people mostly shop online for product is through dispensary websites where you only see their menu. And what we're doing is creating the way that people shop for product in every other category in their lives. Beauty, CPG products, clothing, you name it, you're shopping in a marketplace like Amazon, Target, Walmart, Sephora, etc. So customers will naturally want to shop for cannabis that way. We are aggregating dispensary menus onto Lantern and then presenting them in a way that looks like a very familiar shopping experience to customers. So that's one of the ways that we're trying to normalize cannabis online e-commerce, is that we're creating kind of the shopping flow that you're using on any other kind of site you're shopping. You're able to look for new brands. You're able to compare prices. You can see customer reviews. When you ask about education, yes, this is such an important component of shopping online or offline for this product, but particularly online, we're trying to create the better bud tender experience. Like when you shop in a dispensary, it's different by state. But let's take Massachusetts for a minute. There's just a lot of points of friction when you go to a dispensary. There's a long line behind you. The bud tenders are really busy. In Mass, they can't show product. So you get this menu, like a laminated menu, and you can't really take a lot of time. So if you're shopping on Lantern, you can see all the information you need. There's obviously a lot of content that sits off to the side, but what we're trying to do is embed the right content at the right points in the experience that the customer knows what they need to know. They can create an order with confidence, and they know that they'll like their order when they get it.
Yeah, and it's an interesting anecdote about Massachusetts, and even in specific markets, the experience can be so different store to store. Sometimes it's more of a medical experience where there's a waiting room and it's a one-on-one experience with a bud tender, and then you have the random luck of which bud tender do you get, and often some of their thoughts and opinions kind of influence your behavior and like what they drive you towards, and that's always kind of a random experience. And other shops are more self-service, where you can walk in and kind of explore, and if you have a question, maybe flag someone down. So having kind of a well thought out, comprehensive marketplace that can cover sizable area, like you guys do with Lantern, I could see that's really compelling for the consumer. With yourself, you actually founded Birch Lane under Wayfair, and I think you mentioned Lantern was founded under Drizzly. What are some of like the advantages or maybe disadvantages of having a parent organization kind of as a sponsor company?
Definitely pros and cons. I think the main pro is that you're around people that have done it before. You have funding, you have technology, you have cross-functional support. You just really have people around you, and it's de-risked, right? Like you're not raising a bunch of money independently and then going out and trying this untested thing. It can be easier to recruit talent because you've got the backing of an established company. I think though that, the cons are that you can get pigeonholed into the way that the parent company has always done business, and that can hold you back from innovation. The other thing is that usually the companies are at very, very different stages, and the problems they're trying to solve for the customer, but also internally with people operations and benefits and all those things, they can be very different. Drizzly, for instance, we were far apart when we started Lantern, but Drizzly has grown just incredibly fast over the last year and a half. So the gap between the two companies has gotten pretty wide. They are actually being acquired by Uber. That deal is in process. So when that deal closes in the fall, Lantern will spin out and become its own fully independent company. So it was a good time for that to happen for us, I think.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I'm sure Drizzly and kind of the world we're in, this kind of pandemic, or maybe out of the pandemic, maybe going back into a pandemic, but delivery, we saw these trends in cannabis, and I'm sure you guys did too. More people purchasing online for pickup, for delivery, and I'm sure for alcohol, same thing was happening at a large scale, kind of national scale, where we have national scale, but certain states don't have a cannabis framework quite yet. So that makes a lot of sense. You mentioned you've been happy in the industry. Can't imagine yourself in another industry. Has the experience been at all what you expected?
It has not been, but it's been so much better than I expected. I think the people in this industry are incredibly talented and creative, and they have to be because it's such a mess of regulations and marketing. It's not a lot of marketing channels, and supply chain is weird. So every person you meet who's had any success in this industry has had to be very innovative in a way that I've not seen in other industries. There's also just a very high level of passion for the product, the plant, for the social equity component of the business. The equity component for Lantern is actually incredibly kind of like important and big part of what we do. So that was another thing that really just motivates me and is exciting. I'd love to see more women in the industry and more people of color at the executive level. I would say I think that's lagging behind where I've been in beauty and in furniture and in apparel. They're a little further ahead there, but hopefully we'll get there at some point soon.
Yeah, I could see that, and it's kind of like tech, and your organization's the overlap of tech and cannabis, so it kind of has some of the same trends and underrepresented, certainly by females or minority populations. And there's a lot of social equity programs, and we'll get into that because I know that you guys in Massachusetts have quite an interesting program there, and all these other states are trying. Well, not all of them. Many of them are, but some aren't. And the ones that are, I feel like, depending on the state, are doing better than others. And so I'm excited to dig into that with you. And I couldn't agree more. Like, constraints, encourage creativity. And this industry is all about constraints. Like marketing for Lantern, even in a regulated market with Drizzly and Lantern, I would imagine that Drizzly has a little more flexibility on the ways they can, market and advertise. And that's a challenge for any organization in cannabis, but it does just make everybody have to perform even better in the world that we're in here.
Thanks for joining CPG, the Cannabis Packaged Goods Podcast. For more information on Headset, visit headset.io.